Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another video at my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing you a mail art envelope using the Just Batty stencil from CZ Design and Simon Says Stamp. When I showed this stencil in my live stream on Monday night, I mentioned that I have these Batman postage stamps. And the idea stuck in my head and I just had to make an envelope with it. I'm starting out by creating my envelope from scratch using the We Are Memory Keepers 123 punch board. It has directions on the inside of the punch board for a 5x7 card, which tells me to cut my paper to 9 7/8 square. So I've cut down some Bristol paper, and I'm going to be using the envelope score line A on the right side, and then I'm also going to be referencing the envelope score groove on the left. Those are the two things you need to know when you're making an envelope. And you also need to know the measurement of where to line up that top corner on the left, which with the guide on the side that I have the paper size as well, it said to line it up at 4 1/8, so I did that. And then use that score line A along the side. I'm now taking and lining up that scored line and letting it fall into that envelope groove on the left. I'll punch again and then score on that score line A. So I'm going to keep rotating around until I've done all 4 sides. And if you just remember that like every other time is the measurement that's on the board itself, so the 4 1/8, then that helps you to make sure you have a perfectly sized envelope. So I'm just scoring that last little edge there, and now I have my envelope. If you want to, you can round the corners on the envelope, but I tend to not do that. I just keep it nice and sharp. So my idea behind this envelope is I want the main area of the envelope to be blended from kind of an intense purple to maybe a little bit more of a bluish purple at the bottom. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm using Wilted Violet Distress ink and an ink blender brush from Honeybee. I'm just blending that up in the bottom, and then I added some chipped sapphire at the very bottom as well. Now this Bristol paper is beautiful for blending. It keeps the ink on the surface of the paper a little bit longer than a regular cardstock, so you have a little bit more time to really manipulate the inks and get them blending. So I really do love using Bristol paper for this. And the reason why I used Bristol paper for this envelope is purely because I wanted a smooth cardstock, and the only really large piece of paper that is smooth like this was my pad of Bristol paper. So that's why I'm using it. For the flap on the envelope, I've taken the masking tape off the flap and moved it up to the main area. And then I'm going to use that Just Batty stencil. I'm holding that stencil in place with a few little pieces of tape. And then I'm using mustard seed distress ink and adding yellow for all of these bats. Now the flap's too big for this 6x6 stencil, so I'm going to lift up the stencil and move it over and continue that pattern. Thankfully, the pattern is repeating, so it's super easy to extend the design past that 6x6 area of the original stencil. So I'll ink all that yellow on and then lift the stencil, and I'm left with all these bats. The great thing about distress ink, not only does it blend really well on this paper, but it stays wet a little bit longer than other types of dye ink, so it's great for embossing. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle on some clear embossing powder. This is Icicle embossing powder from Burgess Monroe. It's just enough moisture on that ink to attract the clear embossing powder. Then I heat set that until it was smooth and melted, and I could just see when it was melted by tipping in the light and seeing the glossy finish. So now I'm taking black soot distress ink, and I'm going to blend over the top of these bats. And it's going to make it look a little bit more grungy and dingy, but it also resists, all those bats resist the ink because it has that clear embossing powder on top, which is a slick surface. So I ink blended all that black ink on, and then I took a paper towel and kind of buffed off and wiped off the excess. So it's not a super, super dark, intense black because it kind of just seeped into the paper a little bit, but I really love how it turned out. I wasn't sure if it would work this way. I'm so glad it did. So I'm going to take 2 postage stamps from my Batman postage stamps, and the purple on the background of the stamp is the perfect purple. I'm so happy and pleased with how well these purples match. And then I have this really cool circular stamp. Isn't that just a fun stamp? Looks like the bat signal. So those postage stamps are going to stay up there in the corner while I address the envelope. I'm sending this to my friend Christy. She did give me permission to use her address, so thank you so much, Christy. I did a trial run of the beginning part of her name just to get an idea of exactly the spacing I wanted. And then I put down some paper to protect my hand and the inking while I write on her name. I'm using a brush Sharpie. It's a Sharpie with a brush tip. I'm going to use that for her name. I will eventually switch to a regular Sharpie marker for her address. So I'm just putting this on here. At this point, I was wondering, am I going to have enough room for the rest of her name? Turns out I was able to salvage it by just squishing the letters just a tiny bit. I think it turned out great. And I'm so glad that that worked because I really didn't want to have to do that envelope all over again because I didn't fit her name. So I'm taking my regular Sharpie marker and writing her address here at the bottom. Really simple writing for this one. I'm not doing anything super fancy, just really simple. So I'm now going to put my return address up in that top corner. I've covered that flap with embossing, so there was no opportunity to put it on the flap. So I put it in that top left corner. In order to emphasize her name and also the address a little bit more, I decided to put a white border around all of this black lettering. So for the large letters on her name, I used a Pilot Juice pen. This is the thicker version. And then for the smaller letters on the street address, I used an acrylic graph pen or marker from Archer and Olive. This is the 0.7 millimeter size. And I just very carefully went around all of this black lettering, just trying to make sure I didn't encroach on the spacing of the letters themselves. So I went around, and this really gives it almost more of a cartoon look or comic book look, which goes along with the Batman theme. So there's all the lettering. I'm now going to assemble the envelope, and I like to use a tape for this, a really, really strong tape. So I'm going to be using some Express-It tape, and I just put that down on the flap, and I don't go all the way to the corner. This is the bottom flap, by the way. I go to, just a little bit away from that. That's because when I fold up this bottom flap, you'll be able to see that the top, very tip top of that flap is exposed. I don't want it to tape all the way to the inside, so I just reserve that area. I'm almost done with my envelope. The last thing to do is to make it water resistant. I'm using Distress Micro Glaze, and I just use a mini round blending tool for this because I don't like to get my fingers all messy. So I just dip a mini round blending tool in there and then start to apply the micro glaze. And this goes over every single section of the envelope except for the postage stamps. And that's because this microglaze puts a slick surface or a slick coating across wherever you apply it. And if you put it over the postage stamps, then the postal service cannot cancel the stamps, and they run into issues that way. After you initially apply the microglaze, buff it in with a paper towel, and then you're finished. So here's my envelope going out to Christy very soon. I have no idea if she is a Batman fan, but I kind of have an idea that she probably loves ink blending and getting fun things in the mail. So I can't wait to send this out. So thank you so much for watching today's video. This used a brand new product from the STAMPtember release from Simon Says Stamp. Check out the link below to see the entire release. There are so many fun new products. I can't wait for you guys to get them in your hands and start creating with them. On screen, I've got 3 more videos for you to check out. These are going to be mail art videos, as well as my live stream going over the entire STAMPtember release. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in another video very soon.